Hello and welcome to FinTech Impact. I'm your host, Jason Pereira. Today on the show, I have a return guest, James Rockwood of CapIntel. James was last with us in December of 2012. And he, of course, runs a company called CapIntel that provides investment analytics and reporting and proposal generation for various financial institutions. And I brought him on the show to catch up on what's been going on in the last 4 and change years. And with that, here's my interview with James. James, thanks for coming back.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to see you again.
Oh, my pleasure. So James Rockwood of CapIntel, remind us about CapIntel.
So CapIntel is an enterprise-grade investment presentation platform. Our vision is to provide confidence for the moments that shape financial futures. And the way that we really think about our role is to do everything we can to assist advisors in articulating the advice. In particular, when it comes down to some of the most critical decisions around products. So what do you have today? What am I trying to provide advice on? Why should you hold right now? What's the impact of selling? Where should we invest this extra dollars? And our job, as we see it, is to make these intangible products feel tangible for the moment that the investor needs to make a decision. So we want to arm advisors with the best presentation, the best collateral that they can in those really critical interactions they have with customers.
Yeah, I've cited your software in the past in various presentations, specifically around the concept of digital intimacy, which still makes me smile and laugh every time. But long story, I accidentally coined that term on a podcast with Adam Notman and Adam Holt and Derek Notman, and it stuck. So specifically around the concept of the fact that a lot of the software coming out these days and for the last several years has been really pretty enough and user-friendly enough to actually put in front of a client without confusing them. And you really leaned heavily into not just that piece, but also the entire, how can we help build understanding and not overwhelm people piece of this. And I think you did a great job there, but we'll dive into that. So it's been 4 years. And you were just sharing with me that was several moves and 2 children ago, right? What's happened in the business life?
Yeah, that's also, I think, 4x the headcount, probably 10x the revenue. We're multi-country now. It's been a really incredible 4 years. I would say, and I think it's really important to highlight that I got to shout out to our champions. We sell to enterprise and people have to make champions in these enterprises, these large financial institutions have to make a bet on us. And we wouldn't be there without those people making bets on us. And we wouldn't be there without people like yourself, Jason, who I know get consulted when these champions are coming and saying, hey, I've got this new software. I really want to deploy it. Do you think it's going to meet the value, et cetera? And I remember once I saw you talking to one of our champions at a breakfast when I was in Toronto. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe things are getting pretty serious.
Let me lead in. He's trashing me or supporting. I got to hear this one.
It was one of those moments. The world's a small place. But I will say that, like, these people make big bets on us and we wouldn't be there without them. And so I can certainly name every champion we've ever had and cherish them because execs have to take risks to take on new software. Thankfully, we're getting better and better at making that decision easier and easier. But back in 2021, when we were here, we had just won our first major enterprise accounts with Canada Life and Investors Group in Canada. Now we're across North America, which is really exciting, supporting over 20,000 financial advisors to help articulate the value of advice to their investors.
Excellent. We're going to dive into a bunch of things, but I will say I think it was Ray Kurzweil who's done various writings on artificial intelligence and whatnot, and is an inventor, has said something to the effect of a lot of business ideas are not bad ideas. The timing's just wrong, right? And sometimes it's a technology issue. Sometimes it's a market issue. I feel like you got your timing fortunately right because you came in right before a big number of changes happened in Canada and the US around Reg BI and around client-focused reforms. And you really leaned heavily into enabling some of the stuff that came out of that. Can you speak to the role that regulatory change played in your ascent?
Yeah, I think for us, when I was looking at the tech landscape at the start, and we had been in market for a couple of years before we got our first enterprise deals, but we started to realize that compliance in many workflows is being treated as a separate activity. So you create your materials to show a customer, and then you do compliance work as well. And my whole thought process is the most effective compliant work or the most effective workflows are already compliant. They're ensuring there's compliance embedded in there. The firm's interpretation, the regulations are being represented, and you're helping guide the user in a way that allows the firm to feel like, okay, you've met the boxes that we think you should, or you've done the things that we think you should, but that doesn't feel like extra work for the advisor. And so the workflow that we represent, the workflow that we cover, ends up with a client presentation, which is a really important piece of collateral. And so we embedded controls and different optionality that our clients could select to help them meet some of the requirements they need for the regulation. So from our perspective, compliance is a group that we love to chat with. It's an absolute stakeholder. It's a core buyer in our personas as we go through. We also want to make sure that when we do the rollout, we don't brand ourselves purely as compliance tool, because that's really missing the point and I think the value of what we do. And so what we try to do is get them on side, help them with their interpretation, build controls as they need. And it's been great to partner with these folks and see their willingness and openness once they understand, okay, I can actually make this activity meet my requirements. And so Reg BI and CFR in Canada have been big. We're following the latest updates as well, not just from our own perspective, but to see where can we innovate? How can we help reduce the admin workload? Because I know that is such a big burden on advisors, general admin across everything. And so workflows that you can streamline that, compliance that can be taken care of. These are things that I think are really important to us as we continue to innovate.
Yeah, I've often lamented that the industry creates its own problems through ex post compliance. So the advisor does all this stuff, the money and the investment set up in the account, and whoa, the forms don't reflect this. This was never set up in the first place. And lo and behold, we create a system that's completely just back, instead of focusing first and foremost on not letting you progress through the journey unless you've lined up all your ducks so that by the time the client's money lands, you're in good shape, but doing it afterwards. And Frank, when you think about the fact that this is a duty of care, that we are taking on people's life savings, their aspirations, their goals, that's the way it should be. Kudos to you for getting in there and helping compliance departments realize how backwards their systems were in the first place and how much they could alleviate not only their stress, but the advisor's stress just by creating an enjoyable workflow, something that actually would not just check the box for compliance, but give them, I think this is where you really nailed it, was you're not just checking a box for compliance sake, you're giving them a useful tool to help win business. And that is a winning formula.
And I would say too that a lot of it was really down to the tech that was available to the advisors. Part of what we found is people had an immense amount of frustration of what was available and just something that didn't really exist in this space. And I think about something like one of the examples that we talk about with compliance is trying to make sure that what you're sending in the proposal, what you're sending in the presentation, you can actually sell, you can actually trade on. And for the most part, prior to us entering the market, when an advisor would find that out if they made a mistake was when they were going to enter the trades. And the trade, you've gotten past it, you've talked to the customer about it, they're excited, everything's moving forward. Now you're actually getting into the fulfillment and you're getting blocked at the trading level, at the system level. And that's way too late because now you have to go back to that customer. Sorry, I made a mistake. I actually can't give you this product. I've switched it out for this one, which obviously is a huge erosion of trust with the investor, right? And it could be a logistical mistake or transposition, something that's really innocent. And I think that us now working in, for example, ensuring that you're getting warnings or you're being told what you can and can't put on your shelf or what is on your shelf, sorry, as you're creating the presentation, allows you to catch things like that before you get in front of a customer so that when you're showing them something, it's something you can actually transact on. And so I think small things like that really help protect relationships at scale. And when we think about the clients we work with, we're looking at these significant user bases. We really want to make sure that we're trying to cover all of our bases as sort of scaled enterprise space.
So the other piece you've done is you've taken this just from the PDF, right? You've basically created interactive dashboards to help communicate these principles. Again, I'll go back to saying this is one of your digital intimacy plays, because I've often lamented that so much of the digital world is basically pointing us to an end state that results in a digital representation of paper, completely missing the opportunity that we have, given the fact that we have completely changed the medium of communication. And I will give a shout out to Canadian heritage commercials. When you think about Marshall McLuhan talking about the media as the message, like we have not embraced how dynamic and how much more entertaining we can make that experience. So talk to me about how you decided to basically how you pushed beyond the PDF, how you've created that interactive dynamic workspace for collaboration and communication.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I'm trying to get over the Canadian heritage piece. I've got all the sayings in my
The
head going
Americans
on.
have no idea what I'm talking about. It's hilarious. We all grew up with these commercials about like part of our heritage and talking about great Canadians throughout time. And Marshall McLuhan was one of them. Google that if you don't get it. But anyway, if you want,
Listeners
actually,
know.
funny story. If you want really confuse Americans, try to explain to them what the pokeroo is. When I showed them a picture, they thought it was crazy. But continue.
Yeah, great point. I think when we started the business, the presentation medium was PDF, and we still definitely support that. It's still a large part of the industry. There's a lot of stuff, think about compliance, like a lot of things are built around the idea of the PDF. But I think you're particularly missing the potential in the PDF. Things like a simple page break can just make you have to read information in a very particular manner. If you think about the way that, an investor and an advisor have a discussion, a lot of times these advisors have these massive amounts of information in case somebody asks a question about Sharpe ratio and you weren't expecting that. You were talking to somebody who, based on everything you knew about them, was unsophisticated, they weren't incredibly knowledgeable about finance, but turns out they've got a Robinhood account and they have a closet CFA, for lack of a better term, and they're going to show up with a lot of detailed questions. You want to make sure you're prepared to answer those questions. But what that also does is, for many clients, you bring these massive amounts of information, and it's extremely concerning for them because they don't understand what you're showing them, or they don't understand that information. You are asking people to make a really difficult mental leap. It's, hey, all these things you care about so much, your financial goals, which are things like sending kids to college, taking care of an aging parent, buying a house and where you can live. These are incredibly important personal goals that are also financial goals. It's very hard to decouple those two things. And you're saying to those people, trust these products that are intangible with whether or not you meet that goal. And so what you're really looking to do is to build confidence in that discussion. You want to make sure that you're showing people information and allowing them to educate themselves or to be educated by you as you're having that conversation. And so showing them mass amounts of quantitative information, I think, is extremely concerning to many people because they're, what does all this mean? How do I feel better? I feel worse about this. And we thought by moving it from the PDF into the online space, that could open up a lot more capacity and capability for the technology. And if you think about things now, AI that's come out, you want to talk about intimacy. AI can build an incredible amount of personalization to really allow people to see this presentation was built for me. It allows you to do things that were completely unscalable before when it comes to a lot of our goals of making these products feel real and feel tangible as you're getting ready to make a decision, which is always what you're using our software for. It's not just prospecting, it's checking in. It's, hey, you've got some extra money. Where are we going to put that? Hey, you're nervous about the markets, and I'd like to talk to you about whether or not you should hold. You want to divest for a goal. You want to understand the impact. So we really think use us when you're trying to make decisions across the client lifecycle. So going to the online space, going to the cloud has started to open up much more capacity for that, like hyper-personalization or digital intimacy. I think is a great way to talk about it at these critical moments.
Yeah. So not just critical moments. The reality is that this is something that should be baked into everyone's process, right? Start to finish, research, delivery, presentation, communication, update, and you're enabling every aspect of that along the way.
Absolutely. And that's been our ambition. And I think where we spend a lot of time improving workflow to do that too.
All right. So talk to me about moving across borders. Canadian market, you started off and then you moved to the US. Talk to me about how that was different and where you found success.
Yeah, great question. So moving to the US was quite different in the fact that there's many more suppliers in the US than there are in Canada. And so you have many more options for the same type of product. And so what we found was that we started to enhance our analytics into more in-depth analysis immediately, because we found that as things get more and more similar, there's more options, the differences become smaller, right? And so you need to dig into new methods or new ways. So what we found is that there was certainly a difference in the expectation for analytics. And so we made a bunch of investments in that, as well as also you're running into new security types that are much more common that you don't run into in the same in Canada. So think about things like annuities is enormous in the US, right? So there's some different product levels that are going to be slightly different. So just getting new coverage, improving alts coverage, things like that was really important for us when we thought about how to make the transition. And then in addition, it was about how do we get in front of the right people in the right room with the right recommendation. And so for us, having seen a lot of success, be fortunate to see a lot of success in Canada, we could get in front of a lot of the right people. And in the US, you're going back to square one. Before we started this, you made a joke about knowing us when we were three guys in a small room on the Esplanade in Toronto, renting space from Scale Up Ventures. And it felt like that again, because you're going back from being this well-known entity who is increasingly the safe bet into this unknown entity. And so we started by going down the partnership route. So we established a strategic partnership with FactSet. That helped us get into the right room. And then from there, we've been really fortunate again to start to see a lot of success because those firms understand how hard it is to sell to the client base that we have. They understand that we are going to be responsible. We're not going to we have experience deploying to this scale. We've got the quals, we've got everything in line. And so it's a combination of, there were some technical changes that need to be made around product security coverage, things like that, analysis. Then there was the fact of how do you build a brand in the US and how do you build notoriety in the US for those people that you're trying to get in front of. And so I'm very grateful to say that we felt like we've cracked that now, had triple digit growth last year in the US, brought on several new logos that are pretty significant, which we're really excited about announcing later in the year. And now we're certainly in the US and continue to grow there as well as continue to grow in Canada to the firms that we haven't yet had a chance to work with.
So besides the difference in terms of just marketing, starting from zero, having to build all those networks again, build product trust in the market, did you find any material differences in terms of the product had to be modified or the approach and the value proposition had to be different?
So I would say, largely speaking, it's the same. I would say that there is certainly differences in some of the controls when we think about the regulatory change, but broadly speaking, the Canadian and US systems have a lot of similarities as it relates to what we have to do, right? So they're different at the high level, but when you get into particular workflows or particular risks, there can be more similarities. So we felt like a lot of what we built in Canada was actually directly applicable to the US. You don't really, you don't really see the SMA market is a really interesting space. And in the US, again, it doesn't have the same relevancy in Canada and so I think there's just a bit of that, which again is really detailed stuff, but is really important because for us, we want to make sure you have the right products to call upon when you're trying to articulate that advice. And so some work that we had to do to make that happen.
You continue to see a growth path in the US. You've done a great job of I won't say cornering the market in Canada, but you basically got a material market share. Let's just put it that way. Where do you see this going? What's next?
So we're just started in the US to a large degree. I think that we're very grateful to have made some wins, but there's a lot more folks we want to talk to and a lot more people who need to see what we're doing that I think can benefit a lot from our software. And then in addition to that, we think about what's next for us in terms of product, right? We aren't going to be a single product business. We are really good at the workflow that we own, but there are adjacent workflows that we think are also underserved that we feel well positioned to also go after. So what happens if you say yes to a proposal? How does that now work? What's the next step? Is that going to be as seamless and intuitive as what our proposals look like today, getting into that next step? How do we make sure that we are thinking about AI in a really particular way? I think banks, generally speaking, are very careful when it comes to AI.
Rightly continue.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not going to doubt the teams of security and all the people and the thought leadership that they have around that. I get it and respect it. We still have to be prepared because they will adopt it increasingly quickly as the technology continues to, in their view, become safer and more proven out as a system level. And for us, there's certainly an amount of just making sure that we are staying an innovative business, continuing to challenge not just the way that we operate as a software business. So that's obviously where we see huge wins, but also how do we embed this into our product to unlock things we've never been able to do before, particularly when it comes to making these products feel really tangible for people. So I'm really excited at the capacity and the capability that we have there and the new products coming out. So certainly in Canada, we're going to continue to launch additional products. We're going to continue to grow in the US. We entered the Mexican market this year as well, which we're really excited about. I'm excited to announce later this year. And so we are seeing this as a broader problem that faces all wealth markets. And so from my perspective, I'm a big student of history, and Rome fell because it's expanded too quickly. And I think you want to be careful when you come to that, and you don't want to allow hubris or success to make you think that it's not going to be just as hard everywhere else you go. But I also think we want to consider the vision that we have of confidence for the moments that shape financial futures, and how do we bring that to as many people as we can. Certainly excited to be in the US. That's a core focus of our business right now, as well as continuing to grow and service our customers in Canada and build a reputation there, continue to increase our market share. And then I think that LATAM as opening up to us is really exciting. Wasn't necessarily expected, but when you see a good opportunity to grow, you should take it.
I prefer the one of the best business quotes I've ever read was the CEO of Patagonia, who said there's two ways you can grow. You can grow fat, you can grow strong, right? Making sure you do it at the right pace is exactly how you grow strong. And then you said the AI word, so we got to come back around it. So I get what's happening. You get on two trends, right? One, financial institutions are taking their time figuring out the AI play, specifically concerned with security. And frankly, they need to, because it's people's life savings, right? Like, bottom line is we cannot have hallucinations ruining people's lives. And
Sure.
move fast and break things works well in industries that are highly regulated for a reason, like healthcare and finance. So it's going to take a little bit of time. But the other piece that you discussed, so you're being thoughtful about that. We can go into that in a second. But the other piece you discussed was about enabling workflow. And this is where I feel, I guess, because of the AI systems that have come into play, the focus is turning to. Can you speak to the conversations you're having around demands on how you can enable and power workflows?
So I think part of this, the way that we're approaching it is a way of trying to work with our customers to show them the potential, to show them how the world can work, how certain workflows can be massively streamlined when it comes to AI. So you think about something such as hyper-personalization. So how do you make sure that a presentation really looks and feels and reflects the conversation that you're having and the context for the investor? And so if you think about that, you think about things like, for example, the rise of AI note-taking in the industry has been really big. People are okay bringing that in. But then you think about, okay, if I want to translate that into the presentation, that would have been a lot of manual work beforehand, which can actually now be done automatically, which is amazing. So things like that, as far as improving that kind of connectivity and the relation for the customer, I think is really important. So we're spending a lot of time doing that. We spend a lot of time with retail investors, really understanding how they understand information, how they interpret data, the emotions that they have, really trying to get into their seat to say, okay, how do I build the best presentation possible for people at scale? For people who have many different needs, many different levels of sophistication, are coming to advisors for many different reasons. That scale piece that AI can provide, that hyper-personalization, I think is really exciting. And is something that when I started the business, I always wanted to do, but had thought, okay, how do you actually make that work? And now to have tech that allows that, I think is really exciting. I would also say too, I think that AI is going to really raise the bar for software providers. I think that this is something that people need to it's not just about embracing AI for your tool, it's about understanding that overall the bar for software is going up. Now, the minimum is going up, the expectation is going up, and to make sure that you're continuing to ride on that and that you're really treating your software as something that needs to continue to evolve, and you're treating your clients as scarce and people with autonomy who can make decisions, not like these firms that are really hard to get into, but then once you're in, you're there. I think that status quo is going to continue to get challenged.
Yeah, I'd say that's due to a couple of big trends. One, the advent of vibe coding or agent assisted coding, whatever you want to call it. I think vibe is going to stick. But the fact is that skilled teams can now move faster than they've ever moved before, being able to hand off a lot of the workload and just validating it. And also, that's making it more difficult for people who just basically render a view of data. So because people can internally build software around their own specific desires and needs that are now built for the one as opposed to the many. So it's an interesting challenge. And particularly for you, I think you're rendering a version of it. Again, if you're not providing value in terms of the UX, of the experience, of the workflow enablement, you'd be in trouble, quite honestly. But I think you've done a good job of putting yourself in a position where companies will look at what you're doing and say, why would we touch this? It's not worth us standing something else up and basically maintaining it when this is meeting all our needs at a reasonable price.
Yeah, I think for firms at our stage, 90 people, ambitious growth targets, still extremely nimble. We're not so big that things are really hard to do. I think this is a total accelerant for firms like us. I think for larger firms, that's where the challenges are going to be greater. You have legacy code, you have tons of tech debt, things that are harder to change, things that are harder to adapt. And so certainly for us, this just is another, I don't want to minimize it, but we have faced a lot of challenges in our time, in our short history here. And we see this as another thing that just continuing to raise the bar. We like to raise our own bar internally. They can get raised externally. I think this is a nice external bar raising moment. And for us, it's just about continuing to be humble and to sit back and say, how do we make this better? We welcome AI entering the space. We think it's a great thing to see. You look at Claude's new plugins and wealth management and stuff like that. It's awesome that the attention's being spent on this space. I think that it's incumbent that we continue to innovate and also continue to build that relationship with our customers to be the people they look at as innovative. So it's a nice fire under our rears, as it were, that I think thankfully we've been stoking on our own for at least 4 years since we last spoke. And somebody else is adding some logs, which is great. But I think for us, it comes down to recalling that this is going to be an area that we need to make sure people go, hey, okay, I don't want to touch this. They do a really good job. This is a really specialized skill set and knowledge and piece of software that does the job extremely well. They're a great supplier. We have a good relationship with them. They're reasonable. They're responsive. Being a really good business is more important than ever. Having great relationships and being a great supplier is more important than ever, and a great partner of our customers. So I think this just continues to tell us, let's do this. And then the nice thing is we benefit also from velocity improvements. We get to benefit from the work that AI is helping us with our developers as well. So that part I think is really important.
Ironically, I just had to hit mute because I had cowork doing something in the background and suddenly sound started playing. Yes. Claude's wealth management plugin. I have grievances and I plan on taking them up with Anthropic directly. If anyone's audited the output, you will understand my list of grievances. Yeah. So anyway, we'll come back to that at some other day. Hopefully I won't piss off Anthropic too badly and they'll take away my toys. Okay. So yes. Okay. So we covered just about everything from where you were and how AI is impacting you, which is fantastic. So I'm going to wrap up with the same 3 questions I end up with every time. And it's been a while since you've done it, so I'm sure you forgot your previous answers. But the first question is, if you had one thing you could change in your company or the industry as a whole, what would it be?
Yeah, I don't remember that, my last answer. Let me think about that.
Stumps everybody. I should probably end with that one, but
Look, I think for me, seeing some of our latest hyper-personalization work getting widely adopted, I think is something I would love to change. I think that it's good that banks are taking the time to do this. I think there's also tons of really cool capabilities that make a meaningful impact. It's not AI for the sake of AI. Like, I think one thing that people get wrong is AI is a means to an end. And you got to go back to the problem. What problem are you trying to solve? And this is a great accelerant to help you do that. I think we can solve new problems with it. I would love to have that in every single presentation and every single client that we have, all on it and totally there. So if I could wave a magic wand and just allow that to be in every single advisor's hands of our customers and fully adopted, that would be the number one thing that I would do right now for us. Cause I think that the impact of that is just going to be so amazing for retail investors and for advisors. So I want to see that live and at scale.
fantastic. Second question, what's been the biggest challenge in the company where it is today?
That's a really good question as well. I would say it's really the small things. We have a series of virtues in our business. So we thought about values, but values are single words and they can be hard to interpret. And so we give sentences as ways to direct us on how to act and how to behave within a business. And one of them is we sweat the details while keeping our eyes on the timeline. And I think that the really detailed work, I've compared working in our business to folks who've interviewed with me as running through a rose thorn maze with a loose fit cable knit sweater. If you aren't really careful, you're going to destroy that from all these little tiny thorns. And you really want to be careful, particularly when you're dealing with large enterprise. And so for us, I think it's just continuing to recall that every day you wake up, it doesn't matter where we're at. It doesn't matter the success we've had, or it doesn't matter the clients that we have. The details continue to really matter. That's like the constant thing that I think is something that we need to continuously remind ourselves. It is always there. Any setback we've ever had is because some detail has been missed or we overlooked something. And every single victory we've had is because we caught them and made it happen. So it's extremely detailed work. It's really complicated software. It is extremely detailed to work with large enterprise. They're very discerning, as they should be. They can work with anybody in the world. And so for us, it comes down to sweating the details. I think it's just so critical to success in our business.
And the last question is basically, what keeps you getting out of bed in the morning? Keep on fighting the good fight.
So that one's a lot easier to answer of the three. Glad to end on that one. I started this business because I wanted to run a company that I thought could make a difference and do something that's really important, and I thought could do it at a really large scale. And for me, I had no experience. I mentioned this last time I was on your podcast, but I had no experience prior to starting this company in wealth or asset management. I'm not a software developer. And this is why did you go into this space? And it really comes down to the problem of I really genuinely want investors to feel as confident as they can in the advice that they're receiving. I think that advisors do an incredible job of doing that, but I think software can help enhance that so much. And I think software can do such a great job because these products are intangible. We have a chance to partner with the advisor to really help improve the potency of their time, the potency of the meetings that they have to really give clients confidence. And so for me, if we're doing our job right, more investors are feeling better about the decisions that they're making. They feel more empowered about the decisions that they're making. Advisors feel happy to have more confident customers. I think the world's a better place with that. And I think that's for many reasons. So that's 100% what gets me out of bed, has for the entire time I've been doing this, and will continue to as we continue to grow.
James, thank you for coming back. Greatly appreciated. And congrats on all the success since we last met and since the four guys in a small cramped workspace times.
Thank you so much for the support, the exposure as well, and the support and the advice you've given along the way too. So thank you, Jason.
My pleasure. That was James Rockwood of CapIntel. I hope you enjoyed that, and go back and listen to the first episode and see how things are coming along, because it's nice to see good people win. As always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, wherever your podcast. Until next time, take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Woodgate Financial, an award-winning financial planning firm catering to high net worth individuals and their families. To learn more, go to woodgate.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, or find more episodes at jasonpereira.ca.